welcome back to another episode of The Technology Alchemist. The sponsor for our show is your Virtual CTO. Your Virtual CTO is a technology services company specializing in increasing your revenue and profit through a close examination of your technology engine. Your Virtual CTO offers exclusive coaching for business leaders that is the only business coaching program that includes technology as part of the program. If you want to learn more about how you can make more money by tuning up your technology engine, head on over to getyourvirtualcto.com. Now, in today's episode, we have Jeff Pugel. Jeff is the founder and CEO of Ignition, an outbound sales agency focused on helping SMB B2B organizations grow their sales pipeline and get more clients. LinkedIn has been a huge, if not 100% part of how he has grown his own business, as well as one of the integral channels used for clients. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey, it's great to be here. Mike, how are you doing today?
Great. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, so the listeners can understand, because we always speak in acronyms when it's our business. What's SMB?
SMB, small businesses.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But I'm definitely, I drive people crazy because I don't assume, so I ask lots of questions.
I appreciate that. We all have our jargon we all like to talk about. So I've learned long ago, never assume, never presume.
Yeah. So when we're talking about small businesses, that can mean a lot of things.
Yes.
What is your target client base?
So when I talk about small businesses, I'm really looking at companies, where, it's probably headcount wise, well under 100, possibly, 50 and under, 20 and under. But I really look at it's more of a psychographic target of it's the owner or the couple of executives who are doing most of the selling themselves in addition to running the business. So it's a small business that isn't quite large enough to have its own, fully fledged sales team just yet. It's going to be the owner, maybe a VP, maybe depending on the size, they may have one sales rep or BDR rep with them, but they're still kind of fledgling in that regards.
Okay. So let's say there's somebody named John is like the perfect client for you. Yeah. What is it that you do for them?
Essentially, I take sales prospecting off of their plates. A lot of companies nowadays, the challenge most of my clients have is that there's just not enough hours in the day to do everything. They're running a business, but in the course of a 10-hour day, maybe 12 hours, they have 1,001 things on their plate. Yeah. So I come in and just as, they probably hopefully have outsourced some functions such as, bookkeeping, payroll, legal, those type of non-core functions. I do the same thing and take prospecting off of their plate. The reason being is there's a stat out there, and I've seen this myself being in sales in one way, shape, or form for my entire career, is that to do prospecting correctly and to keep your sales pipeline full, you need to be prospecting for upwards of 2 to 3 hours a day. And it's completely asinine to expect, a small business owner to be, devoting 2 to 3 hours a day to fill in the pipeline. The conversations I have, they all agree, yes, it's needed. But we all know, being, business owners ourselves, Mike, is things come up throughout the day. Clients are happening. You got this fire drill. This happens. Next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon already. I just got here, so got my, my first cup of coffee is on my desk. Oh my Lord, and then of course, you prioritize what happens. Things such as prospecting get kicked off to the next day. It's a wash, rinse, repeat cycle, and then. My clients, by the time they come to me, they realize, oh, it's been, my pipeline is bare, it's dry. And they know, okay, I got to fill that back up. I need help doing this because I can't do it all the time. And that's usually where I come in to the conversation and help them take that big piece of the puzzle off of their plates for them.
So do you also qualify the leads for them?
I do offer a couple different ways depending on how we like to approach things. There's a couple different paths to take really depends on the particular client, what they're looking for. So that's all part of my normal, kind of onboarding process I go through with them. It's understanding, who exactly is their target audience of who they're looking for. Some are very broad based, so you can kind of cast a wide net because they're kind of they're talking to everybody, maybe a specific job title, but they're kind of ubiquitous. Others become very specific, so very much a vertical basis. And so it depends on that, how much qualification is needed, but it's really on a case-by-case basis. My thing is getting the right solution for the right client. And because of that, really, I don't have a true, cookie cutter solution, because each solution is going to be slightly different for each client, because each client is going after a very different, unique, target audience. They have their own specific need they're trying to solve. So would not really be doing them service if I just say it's a one size fits all
Right.
solution.
Do you have any kind of specific industry you specialize with?
One industry that's really near and dear to my heart is the agency world. So advertising agencies, marketing agencies, only because that's the world I've come from in the past. So that also includes TV stations, newspapers, radio stations, any type of media outlets working with their sales teams. But from that, it's really easy to spin it off into other professional service firms. It's really the same thing. You're not necessarily selling a product, but you're selling a service. So it's very easily to, kind of move between those worlds. But really, if it's stock, I like working with those professional service firms, especially because there's this, you're not selling a tangible product, you're selling more intellectual
Right.
products.
So what do you think is the number one problem these businesses face other than having to fill their pipeline?
The big one I see, believe it or not, nowadays is how they position themselves. There's a lot, a lot of them, when I first talk with them, their positioning is very vanilla. It's in such a competitive world that we live in nowadays, it doesn't really give them a way to stand out amongst all the competition. For instance, you can come across, let's say, an accounting firm. Well, we're an accounting firm. Okay, you go to any chamber breakfast, you'd probably be 5 other accounting firms,
right,
over there. So my first thing I always like to do is, well, how are you different from everybody else, out there? Do you focus, like we're just talking about a second? Do you focus on a particular industry, vertical niche? Are you, and let's say, for instance, what I'd be looking for is, are you an accounting firm that specializes in manufacturing companies? Are you an accounting firm that specializes in startups? Something like that. But now you start to kind of separate yourself.
Yeah, differentiation is not well understood by entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
No matter what your business is, you have to be doing something to look different than the next guy.
Yeah.
And that's where they fall short.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the biggest thing I've seen a lot of times, and I've gotten this when I go through this process, this is actually part of my normal onboarding process with clients. I kind of do like a deep dive with them, really understand, get under their skin a little bit, get into their business, and I think we're guilty of all this, is we're all too close to our own business to see the forest through the trees. And I'm guilty of that myself. And I remember, when I was starting my business, trying to get, my differentiator up, I had to bring in some outside help to help me see through it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I do a lot with my clients. I remember I had one kind of refreshed up his whole profile, his LinkedIn profile, kind of spun around. And it was like a makeover. He was like, is that me? Is that me? Really? It's like, yeah, that's, that was the conversation we have. We looked at the transcript. You just needed to pull it out here, kind of, buff it up, shine it up.
Yeah, it's something I find interesting is, just today, actually, I was having a discussion this morning with my executive assistant, and I mentioned to her that I was finalizing interviews for a copywriter. And she said, what are you trying to do? Build an empire with all of these people? And, it was sort of a sarcastic joke. which I like because that's
Mhm.
me. But also, what I explained to her, I says, I think successful people are smart enough to know what they're good at and what they're not good at. And then they work as well as they can until they can have the money to pay for the number one top priority they need to fill the gap for. And then
Yeah.
you kind of limp along in your business until you can afford to pay for, completely different aspects. I mean, I remember a year ago being advised to like write all these blog posts and do all this stuff. And when I asked the guy, well, how do I have time for that? He said, well, you pay people for it. Well,
Yeah.
how does a starting up business pay for, a full-time blogger? You just don't have that money.
Yeah.
And I think um, what's intriguing is people don't grasp that that's why there's experts in each area. And I'm not a copywriter, and
Mhm.
so I know that I need that, so I'm hiring that. I think it's the same thing. I do CTO on demand services for people, and it's because they can't afford a full-time CTO. So it makes sense to me that if I needed a sales force to help me fill up my lead pipeline, to go to someone like you, because you don't have to figure it out. You already have tried and true methodology.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great way of saying it. It's like, it's like come tax time. It's like you can either get what is it whatever TurboTax and do it yourself and stumble and fumble and kill a whole weekend doing it, or you can pay the accountant his nominal fee, give him all your paperwork, and let him deal with it, and probably come out ahead
Well,
because of
yeah,
it.
and you're also protected because
Yes.
once again, that's the other thing. Like I tell people all the time, and they think it's a cocky statement, but it's not. It's the truth. I've been doing this for so long that I've seen pretty much everything you're going to run into.
Yeah.
And you go and try to hire somebody who's only been doing this for a couple of years, you're going to spend a lot of money in areas because they spin their wheels. I don't have to do that.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because this is actually, a phenomenon I'm seeing right now in the whole lead gen and prospecting space. There's a lot of startups popping into the space all of a sudden. Um, and it's a little bit of a gold rush, which is kind of to be expected, in kind of a downturn. But it's really, you need to. My word of advice here is to be careful with a lot of these, because I'm seeing some very themes. I'm getting reached out to on LinkedIn a lot by a lot of these guys, these same guys, and I'm looking at pulling up their profiles. They've been in business for 2 months now. They have a couple hundred connections. You go to they have a non-existent website. All of these things,
Right.
and I'd say, in this case, be careful too, because it is very easy to go down the wrong paths, waste money, waste time, which is, because you're kind of getting someone, you're getting someone that hasn't been there before. And I understand it's a catch-22. You can't get experience until you get a job, and you can't get a job until you get experience. But it's, I think you do want someone that's been down these paths before, because to your point, Mike, we know things that you don't necessarily know if you're not in that particular world on a day in, day out
Right.
basis. And another thing is like a benefit, kind of being an agency is, I'm working with multiple clients at any moment in time. So I have a very wide purview of the market. Whereas, if you're just doing it all yourself, you have a very narrow view of the market. The problem with that is, if I start seeing things change elsewhere, maybe on a couple different accounts, I may say, aha, something's happening here. There's a disturbance in the force, and to bring that, and maybe bring that, keep an eye now on the other accounts, and then maybe as a trend bubbles up, you can pivot those accounts, which then you save those clients potential turbulence down the road, and vice versa. That's kind of sometimes the benefit too of bringing it on to bring outsourcing some work to someone who's doing them for multiple clients at once. Is you're kind of gaining their purview of the world, which can actually benefit you. So you're not running into these potholes and mistakes that if you're doing yourself, you likely would.
I totally agree with you. I've actually had the experience when I used to do coding. I had a client tell me they were going to replace me because at the time I was charging them like $50 an hour, and they found an Indian company that could do it for $10 an hour,
Mhm.
and they had almost as much experience as me, years wise.
Yep.
And what they weren't expecting though was, yeah, okay, even offshore resources are going to charge an appropriate rate for their skills. And
Mhm.
so what was happening was these people would say, all right, I'm charging you $10 an hour. This task took 5 hours to do, so that's $50. And I would look at the same task and say, I could have done that in a half an hour, which would have cost you $25. So you actually were paying a higher hourly rate, but you save money because of the experience and the speed with which you get things done.
Yep.
And also, like, I one time had a boss find a person when I was working as a developer for a company. He found somebody we needed help, and he found somebody for $8 an hour. Well, the very first time the person touched our code, they deactivated all of our security
Oh.
features. So, we had to spend thousands of dollars to redo all of that.
Mhm.
And they didn't just like remark it out; they
Yeah.
deleted it. So it was crazy. But I'm to your point though. Um, People don't have 2 hours a day to spend on filling their pipeline.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of caught in a catch-22 because on the one hand, they need the pipeline full in order to generate revenue. But on the other, they need revenue in order to pay for someone like you. So
Yes.
like how does your program work? Like if I were to approach you about
Yeah.
using your services, how does it work?
So I have a couple different approaches because everyone's in a very different scenario. Now, on one hand, if you're the type where you're just like the outsource, get as much stuff off your plate as possible, I work on a monthly retainer basis. It's kind of come in, just as you outsource other professional services, and we'd get a retainer type of an arrangement set up, and off we go. It's completely off your plate until a lead comes in, and then we.
I think we lost Jeff. Okay.
Oh,
You,
there
you
we
need
go.
you need to go back to restart that answering that question because you froze
Yeah.
right as you answered it.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll edit that out, no problem.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Um, so yeah, there are two. Are you ready?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So they're essentially work with clients in one of two ways primarily. The first is in a done for you environment. It's for clients that just want to get it all off their plate and just entrust that someone else is doing it for them. Like kind of what we're just talking about. Just want to off the plate and let the pro do it. And I'll say that is about 90% of my clients at the moment. They get involved when someone has raised their hand, say, yeah, I'm interested in talking. That's when they kind of come back in the picture. Most of them are happy at that point, and they can advance the conversation at that point. The other aspect could be either those with maybe larger sales teams or ones that are maybe a small organization where the owner wants to be a little bit more involved, and I offer a done with you coaching program where I kind
Okay.
of look over your shoulder, kind of teach you how to do it all yourself, and then kind of do a little bit of a brain dump to you on that, and then get you up and running. I always say though, the problem with that is in business development, tactics and results and approaches are always changing. So it's not static.
Right.
So that's why most of my clients just let me run with it, because how we started off, maybe let's say 6 months ago, what we're doing now has totally changed. Like for instance, these last couple of months with the whole COVID-19 coronavirus. Well, when that all hit in early March, everyone had to do a hard pivot in terms of messaging. You just couldn't be. It's like I remember, the first week of March, regular approaches, regular messaging, just keep going
Yeah.
down the path. All of a sudden, it was roughly that Monday, March. I think it was March 8th. That Monday, the week
Yeah.
before St. Patrick's Day, is when it all kind of really bubbled up, and
Yes.
that's when everything hit the proverbial fan. And since then, it's been a very different environment we've been in. For instance, the messaging approach has changed dramatically. It's no longer about just getting meetings. A lot of people aren't taking meetings. I was just on a call yesterday with a client. Like, I want to move forward, but he says, I can't because I don't know where my market is going at the moment. But with that, it's like I still need to keep moving forward. So it's like the whole approach has changed from selling to just having discussions, but it's a very different approach.
Sure. Sure.
Whereas, if you're just to do more like this, like that done with you, that, probably would have lost some of that. And that's why most of my clients at the end will still say, let's just, let me take it off of their plates, because they realize it's this bob and weave that always has to happen for them to stay, kind of ahead of where everybody else is at.
So do you see a lot of people, that do start out with the done with you approach, eventually switch to the done for them approach? In other words, they come on and they want you to just come alongside of them and have them and teach them how to do it. But eventually they kind of throw in the towel and say, "Here, Jeff, you take care of it."
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of times. I think it's kind of like the adage of, kind of like the DIYers at home. Oh yeah, I can go ahead and fix this, weekend project, until you start to realize, I'm in a little bit over my head at this, and then you call in the
Yeah.
handyman to kind of clean up the mess.
See, I have that exact issue. I have a technology accelerator roadmap program that it guarantees an increase in revenue and profit or your money back. And there's two ways to do it, though. There's I can teach you how to do it. It costs a little bit less money.
Mm-hmm.
But I can teach you how to do it and then you can run with it. Or I have the one that's a little bit more expensive and then has some maintenance involved with it where we do it for you. But the thing is, what people seem to think about at first is, oh, I need to save a couple $1,000s up front here, so let me go with the you help me do it approach. Then they
Mm-hmm.
start to find out that it's not that easy. And like we were just talking about, who has hours to spend in their day to do these little things? So what they end up doing is they switch to the done for you approach, and they find out that their revenue goes up, their profit goes up. So the little bit extra that they spent, it's a wash.
Yeah.
And again, I think it comes back to, with people like you and I, they're paying for our expertise, and they're paying for results.
Yeah.
And when they do it themselves, it's what's the number one thing? If you ask people in personal development, people go, they read a book, then they don't implement what they
Yeah.
learned. And I think it's the same thing. You could teach them how to prospect all day long, and then right away they're going to be all gung-ho, and for the first week or two they're going to do great, and then all of a sudden, like you said, it sort of moves down the priority list and
Yeah.
it keeps getting shuffled to the side. And before long, you follow up with them and it's, oh, I haven't done anything for a month. Bad
Yeah.
idea. Bad idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see that. Well, thanks so much for all of your input. I think this has been great. Why don't you tell people where they can find you and how they can get in touch with you if they need your services?
Yeah, sure thing, Mike. You can always obviously check out my website. It is ignition.llc, or you can always find me on LinkedIn. That's usually my favorite hangout. So it's just Jeffrey Pugel over there on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I suggest people connect. I mean, I've actually had a conversation with Jeff before this. We connected in a different way through a third party, but he knows what he's talking about, and I definitely highly recommend you. If you're a listener to this show on a regular basis, I would suggest you go check him out. But thanks again, Jeff, for being here. I really appreciate it. This has been another episode of the Technology Alchemist.